We said opportunities and we said threats, right? And we specified that those are external things. Those are things that we do not have control over, and that we need to, on the other hand, prepare for. Yes, Andrew, what were you going to say?
You're probably going to go there.
Yeah, but please, say it.
It just seems like, especially with the opportunities, maybe less so with the threats, you maybe don't have as much control as you do the internal, but you do have some sense of control. I mean, like you have what you can control is your ability to recognize the opportunity.
Yes, that you can control. You cannot.
You can react to them, but you can't change them.
You cannot control the weather, right?
Right.
Is that true? But you can control what you do to plan for different weather scenarios. So if you have take a wedding, right? If someone who does not plan for a backup hall, what? Is not able to have a wedding, or they will very well. Okay, so but that's the other kind of task of an entrepreneur is to, again, in the period of doing the SWOT analysis, to list out the strengths and the weaknesses, and then to move to the opportunities and the threats, which are the external things, and then to figure out how do you plan. What's a tool that you can use to plan and be ready for opportunities and threats? Now, it sounds like this is a little bit beyond your startup entrepreneur, right? Most startup entrepreneurs, frankly, if there's really a truly major, change in the market that, if the key ingredient of the medicine you've developed turns out to be toxic, you're probably dead in the water, unless you've really done your planning and you've really started off, in a way that was usually more beyond most existing entrepreneurial companies. You're in trouble. But I have a friend who was developing a product, a medical kind of medical product, and sure enough, the theory that they thought they had was wrong, and they were able to innovate and adjust internally, and you replace that. Or it was not wrong. It was that it didn't meet up to the standards were changed in the field that they were in, and suddenly what they thought was going to be a very successful thing was just, simply because the standards changed, they could not do it anymore. They had the capacity within to be flexible and to change and find another application of their product. Right? They had no control over the standards and regulations. Maybe if you're a big enough company, you actually can lobby and influence law, but they weren't able to. Okay, so external events cannot be controlled by us. The best thing we can do is to manage the change. To manage the change, we need to recognize it. And the tool that we teach here to, once you've recognized change, to manage it is to do something called assumption-based planning. All right, has anyone here heard of assumption-based planning? Yes, tell us a little bit about it, Andrew. What do you?
I just know like in kind of even in the planning of to get a planation, you use the term was used often. I'm not sure if the process was actually used properly.
Right.
But the sense was that we were sort of.
All right. In the notes, I didn't actually see these notes here, but the assumption-based planning, I think, was actually developed by a Defense Department company, right? Does it say here, guys? It was the RAND Corporation. Yeah, so the assumption-based planning, I think, was actually developed, and again, I have to actually look on Wikipedia because I don't think it's in the notes.
It was.
Was actually developed by the RAND Corporation, which is a huge defense contractor that works with the U.S. military and other militaries to help them plan for. Is that true, Naomi? You know that? Yes. Okay. To help them plan for all sorts of contingencies that they might need to deploy for all sorts of world events, right? So the economy crashes. There is a major fuel crisis because Saudi Arabia, loses its well production capability. There is a huge hurricane that happens. Things that you cannot predict. A sudden revolution in Egypt that no one had on their radar, et cetera, right? How do you manage those sorts of scenarios? Anything to add here?
Also called wargaming.
Wargaming. Another great way to think. Right? Strategic planning. And so what we suggest for you guys as fellows, as entrepreneurs, is to sit down now, early on in your venture, and try and identify what are the core assumptions you are making about the world as you move forward. Right? Jenny, just because I know Jenny's venture, I'm using it as an example, Jenny is making an assumption that people are going to have money to buy products. Luxury products, in fact. Okay? Jenny is making an assumption that the internet will be stable enough for her to do her product. Jenny's making an assumption that there won't be a virus that comes out that rips through all these payment platforms and suddenly it's very hard for commerce to move, right? Jenny's making all sorts of assumptions about the world, things that she has no control of. Does anyone else tell us about assumptions they're making about their own businesses?
I have
Laura?
a book project I'm working on, so I'm assuming there will be books
Oh,
that people will want to read them, that, publishing will somehow maintain itself for a little bit longer.
right. So you're launching a library supply company that's based around creating RFID tags for, for books. You need to assume that books are still going to be used in libraries, right? That's an assumption in your whole business that underlies your business plan. Any other examples?
I worked with a software company that made software for doctors, spent a lot of money on it, and then found out that its assumptions about what equipment the doctors had in their office as well.
Another, or what equipment? What if they develop all this great software and there's a totally new product that just comes out of nowhere that they have no idea how to do with, or the disease is suddenly solved, or all sorts of things like that can happen, right?
Healthcare reform has changed a lot.
Healthcare reform has changed a lot of things for people, and that's okay. So the assumption-based planning is aimed at being very aware of what your assumptions are and trying to understand what might overturn those assumptions, and thereby being able to plan for scenarios that you have to adjust to. Okay, so there's going to be a scenario out there where one of Jenny's core assumptions falls. Well, then what's she going to do? And if she hasn't thought through that, she's going to be surprised, face a surprise, a strategic surprise, and then you're probably going to not survive that surprise, right? And as entrepreneurs, as silly as it sounds, you guys have these small little startups in the Jewish community that one day you have visions of it going somewhere. If you start doing that now, you're going to be much stronger. And you're going to be able to make a much stronger case as well in your pitches, right? When you're talking to funders and you're talking to potential stakeholders and people who want to volunteer for you, and they say, hey, what if print magazines just fall out of favor? How are you guys going to be successful in that case? Or what if we have 5 million, what if we have suddenly, startups start flowering on their own and we don't need your institute training program? Why do we, what if someone comes up with a great e-fellowship program and we don't need to have these high-intensity local programs? What are you going to do? All right, and I have to be aware of those potential scenarios and answer those questions. So a few questions that we can, a few steps, right? What do you expect to happen? All right, and we want to talk about that in a utopian sense, right? So utopian sense for Dan is that there is a very, very continued need for this type of software that this company he's working with needs. The dystopian, right? The dystopian vision of the future. Government breaks down, and and there's no regulation anymore, and there's no such thing as IP, and everything that Dan developed gets ripped off, and someone else does it, right? That's an extreme dystopia, but it's probably better to keep a moderate dystopia. And if you have the kind of dystopian and utopian visions, you can plan for cases that help you be very, very efficient when a utopia is happening, so you can really get the maximum benefit, and cases where you can be less efficient. Can you stop the recording for 1 second, Emily? A case that I'll bring up, just